I am Jonathan.
And Kylene Jones, and we're the Provident Preppers. In this video today, Jonathan is going to demonstrate how to safely cook indoors. And it may be a little bit trickier than you think, so there's some rules and guidelines that we need to follow.
As always, I am the safety Nazi, and it is critical that we do whatever we do safely. We have to understand the limitations of what we're using, and we have to know how to use them in order to be safe. Mostly we are concerned about carbon monoxide, which is the silent deadly killer.
That's the carbon monoxide detector.
Exactly. We want you to be extremely safe. We don't want you to make an emergency that's bad enough worse by making mistakes or doing things that are unsafe.
So, get ready. So in just a minute, Jonathan is going to demonstrate how to safely cook indoors using alcohol in both a little alcohol burner and in this marine device, the HeatPal 5100. He's going to walk you through safe heat as well as cooking, believe it or not, with these little tiny tea lights. He'll also review butane and how to cook indoors with that. While it's not the best, it is an option. But one of the really cool things that he'll talk about is retained heat cooking. How to stretch your fuel supply by bringing it up to temperature and then putting it in an insulated box to continue cooking and save your fuel.
I think you'll want to see this. Thanks for joining us.
Alcohol is one of our very favorite fuels to safely cook indoors during an emergency. Pure alcohol, as Jonathan will explain, burns very cleanly and produces little, if no, carbon monoxide. And an alcohol burner is a very effective way to use this fuel. For more details, Google the Provident Prepper, alcohol stoves, safe to use indoors or outdoors, and review our post. And now to you, Jonathan.
We're talking about this little alcohol burner. You can see the lid just comes off. And then we have a variety of fuels that we can use here. We have Everclear, which you can get at your liquor store. You also have isopropyl alcohol, which isn't going to burn quite as clean. This one in particular is a 91% isopropyl, so it'll burn better than the 70%, but probably not as good as the other fuels. This is denatured alcohol, which you can also use. In the case of this burner, you can see that it has an opening here where we will pour the fuel in, and then it's got these holes all around this ring here. And as this fuel burns, it is actually not burning the liquid, but it's burning the vapors that come off the alcohol, and that will create this little ring of fire here that will be our burner. So today we're going to use Everclear, which is a very, very good fuel. It burns very, very clean and with a very nice hot flame. So we're going to pour some alcohol in there. Okay, you can see this is burning with a fairly hot flame here. Sometimes this is actually almost clear, so you do need to use a little bit of caution and not burn yourself. Then to extinguish the flame, you're simply going to set the cap over to smother it. And we have put it into a little sterno stove. It fits just very, very nicely in there. We're going to go ahead and light that. And we're going to cook us a pot of soup. Just close that up for a little bit of energy conservation, and we will let our pot of soup cook. Okay, our soup has come to a rapid boil. It only took about 5 minutes. Be very, very nice and hot and boiling. So now we are going to set this aside. To extinguish the flame, we are simply going to take the cap and smother the flame like that, and then we'll just let that cool and put the cap on it later after it's cooled down.
Another safe way to cook indoors is with something called canned heat. My personal favorite brand is called Safe Heat. And the reason why it's very inexpensive, it costs less than $2 a can, and it will cook for 6 hours. Some Sterno brands are not rated for indoor use, and some are. So make sure that you check your labels and make sure that it is rated for indoor use. Google the Provident Prepper canned heat, safe fuel for indoor emergency cooking, and you'll learn a few more details than what Jonathan explains here.
Okay, we have our can of Safe Heat here. We've got it lit and it's burning well. Make sure that you are aware that that flame is sometimes almost clear, so you do need to be cautious. Also, this heat is very direct. You can see that that's fairly close to the bottom of the pan here, and so we will need to stir regularly. Keep stirring this to keep it from scorching. And we will just keep stirring this to make sure we don't scorch. Okay, our fondue chocolate here has gotten nice and thick now, and we are going to extinguish our flame. Okay, our children are pretty excited about this mock disaster that we're having, and we only had to call once, and they came a-running.
In this next clip, you're going to witness us do something that's a little bit off-label. Officially, Sterno recommends no more than 2 cans being used at the same time. And in this little clip, what we've done is we've taken an outside barbecue, just a little portable one, and we've put 3 cans of Safe Heat in it because that gives us a lot more heating power and to heat up a pot so that we can bring the water to a boil very quickly, and then we're going to transfer it into a thermal cooker so that we can conserve the fuel, and once it's in that thermal cooker, then it can cook for several hours without using any additional fuel.
Okay, pot is then put into the thermal cooker, locked in, and then for some added insulation I have a towel here, and we will just take this towel, it doesn't have to be fancy, and create an additional layer of insulation to just help that cook a little bit better.
The final way we're going to demonstrate to use alcohol to safely cook indoors today is with an Origo HeatPal 5100. This is a fantastic device. It was originally developed as a marine device to be used on boats, but you can use denatured alcohol to both cook and heat, so its dual purpose makes it quite valuable. Also in this video, Jonathan will demonstrate how to use retained heat cooking. So he brings the rice up to a good strong boil, and then he's going to transfer it to an ice chest that has been lined with all kinds of blankets and towels, and he puts it in that box to let it finish cooking. It takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't use any additional fuel. It's a great thing for emergency cooking.
Today we're talking about the HeatPal 5100, which is a marine device that utilizes alcohol to either act as a cooker or a heater, or both. And so what we need to do is pour the denatured alcohol into our burner here, and then this lid snaps right on top, and all of this slides into this cooker. Again, this is the lid. If we were using it just as a heater, it would sit on like this. Today we're going to use it as a cooker, and we will use it as a cooker on these little stands above the burner. Okay, with the HeatPal 5100, this little lever opens the cover and allows either a large amount of fuel to burn or a smaller amount, depending on how far open we have this. In lighting the HeatPal 5100, be aware that alcohol does burn very clean, sometimes in an almost invisible flame. So you want to make sure that you know that it's burning and that you don't put your hand over there unknowingly getting yourself burned. So we've got it lit now. We've got it open most of the way because we want to cook fairly rapidly here and let the water start to boil. It's been about 18 minutes. We have 6 cups of water in here, and it's not quite to boiling. The thermometer says about 190 degrees. But we are going to go ahead and add our rice. And I like a little bit of rice with my butter. And our salt. We're just going to give this just a brief stir and get that lid back on. And we're going to cook that just for a few more minutes, and then we're going to put it in a hay box or a retained heat cooker. It's been just a couple minutes. We're going to give this just one little stir. And we are going to take this and put this into the hay box. Make sure that we keep this lid nice and tight. That's an important part of keeping the heat. And then we are going to insulate this as well as we can. As you can see, we're just using a ice chest that you probably have sitting around your house, and blankets and a towel in the bottom. Anything that we can do to insulate that. We're going to put this in here.
When it comes to emergency cooking, sometimes you're just going to have to make do with whatever it is that you have. And a lot of times you may have candles in your home. In this clip, Jonathan will demonstrate how to use little tea lights to be able to cook your food. It's not the most efficient, but it sure could make a big difference if you don't have any other options.
What I'm doing here is trimming these wicks, which we want them just to stand straight up, and we want to cut them down to about 1/4 inch. We're going to put one right here in the center, and then the other 6 just around, kind of resembling the shape of this pan. And while this isn't a Coleman stove, it does put out a considerable amount of heat. So for cooking a small pot of something, it'll do a fairly effective job. Just briefly talking a little bit about the design here. Very, very simple. We have some bricks that were left over from when they built our home. We like to have 2 bricks on the side. We have 1 brick in the back here. The main thing we're looking for is stability. We also want to work on design. We want to make sure it's efficient. And this back brick obviously allows a little more conservation. But this creates a very stable design, and we certainly don't want to create a situation that's going to be a hazard or that's going to tip on somebody and make the situation that you're in worse. So we have this pot of water here. After about 15 minutes, we're at about 140 degrees, which isn't ideal. Obviously, you probably want it to cook faster and you want more heat, but this is one of the disadvantages of this. However, it still provides you some good hot water, and I'm going to take and cook some oatmeal. They are an open flame, so obviously you want to be careful, especially if you've got little ones around. And you do want to make sure that when you get done that you extinguish these and let them cool. They are a safe source of heat. As long as they've got sufficient oxygen, they will not produce carbon monoxide. And although they're not an ideal source of heat, they are adequate if that's what you have available to you. Obviously, you probably want to choose, if you can choose, you want to choose something that's going to cook a little more effectively. But sometimes we use what we have available to us. And I'm going to extinguish these candles by just putting this lid over them to smother them. While this is a liquid, you do not want to blow on it, as it might spread that wax, that liquid wax out and perhaps start a fire or burn someone.
Butane stoves are not our favorite choice for cooking indoors. While it produces a very nice hot flame, the fuel is a little bit more tricky to store, and butane will put carbon monoxide into your air. If you read the label on the side of the stove, it will tell you that you need to ventilate for carbon monoxide. So when we use it, we always put a carbon monoxide detector right there so that we're very much aware of how much carbon monoxide is being released in the air, and open a window to ventilate.
Today we're working with a butane stove. These stoves use a canister of fuel like this. It should be noted that this is heavier than air, which means as a little bit of it leaks out, it's not going to dissipate into the air, but rather it's going to go towards the floor. So you do have to be careful. If significant leakage happens, it could fall into a low spot and be a source of explosion. So these cans just fit right in your stove, like that, and they light quite readily. As you can see, this flame is fairly adjustable, and it is a very nice hot flame. I should note this is not one of our favorite indoor cooking methods, and as you can see, we do have the carbon monoxide detector right there. We're going to put this pan on here and cook some eggs. While I'm getting this going, you should note the warning on the side of the stove tells us to provide ample ventilation. This stove consumes air, in parentheses oxygen, to avoid endangering your life. Do not use this stove in unventilated structures. And that's always our concern, is we want to make sure that what we do safely. We need to make sure that we're using these appliances and these methods in the very safest way. While we cook here, we're going to just a little bit of salt and pepper. Let those go just another minute. And I should note that this is only about halfway on. If we turned it up fully, it would provide even a much hotter flame. So you can see this exercise from front to back is only 2 or 3 minutes long, so it is cooking quite rapidly. And then to turn the stove off, you just turn it to the off position and it is extinguished.
As you can see, you actually have quite a few options to safely cook indoors when the power goes out. This isn't an all-inclusive list. In fact, one of my favorite devices is our wood-burning stove, but that's not a good option in the summertime. And sometimes you just need to heat up some water and wouldn't want to fire up your wood-burning stove.
Now for the question of the day. How do you plan to cook for yourself or your family if you have no electricity or natural gas? Think about that.
To learn more, visit theprovidentprepper.org. Thanks for joining us today.
And thank you for being part of the solution.